Welcome back to WION World is One. You're watching Speed News with me, Vidul Kathuria. Let's get started. The United States has reportedly urged Ukraine to accept a US-drafted proposal to end the war with Russia during talks in Geneva. Kyiv objected, saying the plan gives too much ground to Moscow. According to a senior official, Washington didn't explicitly threaten to cut military aid. Ukraine understood that refusing the plan could put future support at risk. The original 28-point proposal would have Ukraine give up the eastern Donetsk and Luhansk regions and significantly reduce its military. Ukraine, US and European officials worked on an updated version on Sunday, but Moscow rejected European changes. The UN Security Council is meeting as tensions rise again in Gaza, despite a fragile US-brokered ceasefire. Palestine's UN envoy, Riyad Mansour, described Gaza as the bleeding heart of Palestine and sharply criticized Israel's actions, calling for a full Israeli withdrawal from the territory. Meanwhile, the Israeli Defense Forces have released new footage of their operations in Rafah, claiming they are dismantling militant infrastructure in what they call the Yellow Line area. Islamic Jihad says its armed wing has recovered the body of one of the last 3 remaining Israeli hostages in Gaza, though there is still no indication of when the body might be transferred to Israel. Over the weekend, Arabic language media reported that both Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad were searching for the final 3 bodies, which were believed to be in different locations across the Strip. The United States has urged global support for President Donald Trump's 20-point Gaza plan, even as several nations warned of rising Israeli settler violence in the occupied West Bank. Palestinian envoy Riyad Mansour said more than 1,000 Palestinians had been killed or wounded since the ceasefire began, and that many in Gaza fear losing half their territory. Britain and France echoed concerns over escalating settler attacks and rapid settlement expansion. Israel said it would honor its commitments under the plan but would respond to reported threats. Hezbollah held a funeral today for military chief Haytham Ali Tabatabai, marking the group's most significant loss since the November 2024 ceasefire that aimed to end more than a year of hostilities. Thousands of supporters gathered in Beirut's southern suburbs to pay their respects to the commander, whose death is seen as a major blow to the organization, as well as to other members of the militant group who were killed. Tehran has condemned the Israeli strike, calling Hezbollah military chief Tabatabai's killing cowardly. Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps has called for revenge, describing the right of the Axis of Resistance and Lebanese Hezbollah to avenge the deaths of their fighters as unquestionable. The statement reflects Tehran's backing of armed groups hostile to Israel. Afghanistan says at least 10 people were killed in Pakistani strikes on its territory. The reported strikes came just hours after a Pakistani diplomat met a senior Afghan governor in Jalalabad, marking the first high-level contact between the two sides in months. Afghan spokesperson stated that a house was hit overnight in the Mughalgai area of Gurbuz district in Khost. He also said additional strikes took place in Kunar and Paktika provinces, where at least 4 civilians were injured. Pakistan has not yet issued a detailed response, and the situation remains under assessment by both sides. Chinese President Xi Jinping has pressed the issue of Taiwan during a phone call with US President Donald Trump. The China's foreign ministry said the leaders also discussed Ukraine, but Taiwan dominated the conversation as Beijing remains locked in a weeks-long diplomatic dispute with Japan over the island. Tensions with Tokyo escalated after new Japanese Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi suggested Japan could intervene in any attack on Taiwan. Beijing says Trump acknowledged the sensitivity of the issue, though his public statement did not mention Taiwan. US President Donald Trump has launched what he's calling the Genesis Mission, a sweeping national initiative aimed at accelerating AI-driven scientific research. Trump signed an executive order establishing the program, comparing its scale and ambition to the Manhattan Project, which developed the atomic bomb during World War II. The initiative reflects the administration's push for rapid, low-regulation expansion of artificial intelligence, positioning the US to outpace China in the race for technological dominance. Sudan's Rapid Support Forces have declared a unilateral 3-month humanitarian truce with the Sudanese army, saying the move supports international efforts to halt the country's devastating conflict. In his recorded statement, the RSF commander said the group would ensure safe passage for aid workers, safeguard relief sites, and allow medical teams to operate without restrictions. He also backed a field monitoring mechanism supervised by the Quad and the African Union, calling the truce a first step towards ending the war and launching a political process. There has been no immediate response from the Sudanese army. A 25-meter Christmas tree now lights up Munich's Marienplatz as Bavaria and the rest of Germany open their Christmas market season. The festivities return 1 year after a car-ramming attack at the Magdeburg market that killed 6 people and injured hundreds. In response to security concerns, local authorities have tightened traffic controls and expanded CCTV coverage around major market areas. The holiday spirit was on full display in Ridgeland, Mississippi, as cars began lining up early at the First Ridgeland Baptist Church for a Thanksgiving meal giveaway. Families waited for help, grateful for the support. Volunteers from kids to seniors spent the morning preparing and distributing the meals. In all, the church handed out 150 packages, enough to feed 600 people, packed with fresh fruits, vegetables, meats, and a full Thanksgiving dinner, including turkey, sweet potatoes, corn, green beans, and pumpkin pie. Brazilian police have launched a new operation in Rio to remove barricades installed by drug trafficking gangs to block police access in the city's impoverished neighborhoods. The effort, named Barricada Zero, will run daily until the end of the governor's term. Police say 200 tons of obstacles were cleared across 5 communities on the first day alone. The operation comes less than a month after a major police raid on drug gangs in 2 neighborhoods, in which at least 121 people were killed, including 4 officers. Human rights groups are calling for investigations, describing the earlier raid as one of Brazil's most violent in recent years. Mexican farmers and truckers staged a nationwide strike, blocking highways and a key border crossing in at least 25 states. Protesters halted cargo traffic on a bridge linking Ciudad Juarez to El Paso, Texas, to oppose a proposed water law that could restrict access to wells and groundwater on private land, threatening irrigation for crops in drought-prone regions. Farmers say they will continue protests until authorities address their demands for safer roads, fairer grain prices, and reconsideration of the controversial water legislation. Negotiations continue in Peru between small-scale miners and lawmakers as Congress has delayed a vote on extending miners' work permits. Around 1,000 miners protested in the capital, demanding permission to continue working in gold and copper mines. Many traveled from across the country, leaving jobs unattended and unpaid. Lawmakers are debating whether to extend temporary permits until 2027 and reinstate 50,000 miners previously outlawed. Permits for informal miners have been issued intermittently since 2016. Critics warn the small-scale mining industry uses mercury in protected areas, threatening Amazonian rivers and indigenous communities. India has lodged a strong diplomatic protest with China after an Arunachal Pradesh woman, Prema Wangjom Thongdok, was detained for over 18 hours at Shanghai Pudong Airport. Chinese immigration officials reportedly declared her Indian passport invalid because it listed Arunachal as her birthplace, and she was stopped from boarding her onward flight to Japan despite having a valid visa. She says airline staff repeatedly referred to Arunachal Pradesh as part of China. New Delhi responded swiftly, issuing a strong démarche to Beijing and asserting that Arunachal Pradesh is unequivocally Indian territory and its residents are fully entitled to Indian passports. A massive cloud of volcanic ash from Ethiopia's Heli Gubi volcano, which erupted for the first time in nearly 12,000 years, has swept across northwestern India. The Indian Meteorological Department says the plume, drifting at 10 to 15 kilometers altitude, is unlikely to heavily impact surface air quality, though hazy skies and a slight rise in minimum temperatures are expected. India's aviation regulator has issued an urgent ash dam advisory directing airlines to avoid affected altitudes and follow volcanic ash procedures. Indigo, Air India and Akasa Air say safety remains their top priority, with several flights cancelled or diverted. A tornado tore through Willowbrook, Texas, causing extensive damage to homes and downing numerous trees. Early reports indicate that more than 100 homes were affected. First responders are actively searching area for any residents who may be injured or trapped. The National Weather Service plans to conduct a detailed storm survey to assess the full impact. Local authorities have urged residents to stay clear of damaged areas and follow safety instructions as recovery and cleanup efforts begin. Apple has announced layoffs across its sales teams as the company aims to strengthen customer engagement. According to Bloomberg, the impacted employees include account managers serving major businesses, schools, and government agencies. Staff who operate Apple's briefing centers for institutional meetings and product demonstrations for prospective customers were also affected. One of the major targets of the layoffs was a government sales team working with agencies including the US Defense Department and Justice Department. Alphabet's Google and venture capital firm Accel will partner to fund at least 10 early-stage Indian AI startups, marking the US technology giant's first such funding partnership. The move comes as several US tech firms like Microsoft, Amazon, and OpenAI make a beeline for the world's most populous nation, seen as a critical growth market where nearly 1 billion users access the internet. According to Reuters, under the partnership, Google's AI Futures Fund and Accel will co-invest up to $2 million in each startup, with the investments focused on the wide areas of entertainment, creativity, work, and coding. According to Reuters, Amazon is urging its engineers to stop using third-party AI code generation tools and switch to its in-house platform, Kiro. The company says it will no longer support new external AI development tools which could limit employee use of popular services like OpenAI's Codex, Anthropic's Claude Code and Cursor. This comes despite Amazon investing heavily in Anthropic and signing a multi-billion-dollar cloud deal with OpenAI. Amazon says the move is meant to improve and expand Hero, which recently rolled out worldwide. Asia-Pacific markets saw a cautious recovery on Tuesday, led by a renewed rally in AI and tech-related stocks. Investors are also expecting US Fed rate cut, adding to the breakthrough. Japan's Nikkei, South Korea's Kospi and Hang Seng in Hong Kong rose nearly 1%, reflecting improved risk sentiment after recent losses in chip and AI stocks. Despite underlying valuation worries, markets are mucking about a potential Fed cut in December, further boosting spirits. Analysts caution that while the tech recovery is welcome, the risks of an overheated AI sector remain, and further catalysts will be required for sustained gains. South Korea's consumer sentiment has soared to an 8-year high, reaching 112.4 in November, up 2.6 points from October. The rise is driven by a new tariff deal with the US, which reduces export uncertainty, and strong GDP growth of 1.2% during the September quarter, beating expectations. Sub-indexes for future economic outlook jumped sharply, while sentiment on current living conditions also improved. Analysts warn that this positive spiral could make it harder for the bank to push forward with rate cuts even as inflation picks up. Manchester City manager Pep Guardiola has issued an apology for confronting a camera person following City's defeat to Newcastle on a Saturday. Guardiola said he felt embarrassed and ashamed for his actions. The City manager said he was furious at several decisions during the loss at St James's Park, and he appeared to take out his frustration on a pitchside TV cameraman after the final whistle. Guardiola also had an intense conversation with Newcastle captain Bruno Guimaraes and the officials. The defeat was Manchester City's 4th league defeat of the season. The 53rd International Emmy Awards have begun at New York City's Hilton Midtown, celebrating outstanding global television. This year, 64 nominees from 26 countries are in competition, with India's Amar Singh Chamkila also in the race. Creators, actors and storytellers from around the world are gathered for the prestigious event. Action star Donnie Yen appeared in Hong Kong to pay tribute to Bruce Lee. Yen attended the opening of a new exhibition marking the martial arts icon's 85th birth anniversary. Co-created by the Bruce Lee Foundation and the Hong Kong Heritage Museum, the exhibition spans 2-meter stations. The central station display features rare photos, film stills, posters and Lee's personal writings, chronicling his life and lasting cultural impact. Bruce Lee's daughter Shannon Lee also attended the event. Scarlett Johansson is set to lead the new chapter of the Exorcist franchise. Mike Flanagan will write, direct and produce the new installment. The original 1973 film was a landmark horror hit, grossing $441 million worldwide and earning 10 Oscar nominations. Jimmy Cliff, the Jamaican music icon, has died at 81. The singer helped globalize reggae and rock-steady music. His wife announced that Cliff suffered a seizure followed by pneumonia. Over a 6-decade career, Cliff delivered classics like Wonderful World, beautiful people sitting in limbo, and you can get it if you really want. Tributes are pouring in from across the music world. That's it on this edition of Speed News. News and updates will continue on the other side of this short break. Keep watching WION World is One.